Yes. Okay. Sounds good. Hello, everyone. We are here today to talk about like how we are making the next generation of like video encoding pipeline at the New York Times. My name is Maxwell da Silva. I'm the senior director of engineering on the video, mobile, and like web platforms group. I have been working as a software engineer for like way too many years and video engineer for the past like 7 years. Um,
I'm Flavio. I'm a senior software engineer. I'm basically working on the media factory team. We are going to discuss a little bit more about what we are doing. I used to work on the video player, but right now I'm 100% focused on this project.
So before we jump in and talk a little bit more about like how are like the new things that we are building, like what are we building, actually like, I want to give you like a little bit of like history on how video works at the New York Times. So we started to produce videos since 2005, and it started as like a prototype like initiative at the company. And back then we had already like our primary CMS called Scoop. And that CMS didn't support like video metadata, the ability to transcode videos or like distribute those videos to the CDN. With that said, there was like an initiative to create this new CMS that was like primary focused on like video. And the CMS is called like Storylog. It was like 2005, and we built this thing, and I was not even there. We built this thing in like Ruby on Rails. And back then, it like pretty much attained all the needs and all the requirements that we had. The CMS was responsible to manage our internal like video encoding like cluster, transcode all those files, and distribute that to the CDN, and have that communication back and forth with Scoop as needed. That system worked like pretty well, but like over the past like few years of use it, we start to see a few flaws on like that architecture. And there are like 5 major flaws. There are a few more, but those are like the major things that we came up to talk today, which is the first one, the whole process rely on a video file name. And that was actually like quite like complicated, because for like our video editors, they need to know like this file name is structured where we have like a production ID, which is like the first few videos there. We have like the versioning of like that video in case of like, I don't know, we need to like retranscode that video for like a different reason. We also had like a slug, which is like really like the title of that video, and even like the resolution. The resolution was not like really required, but it was something that was like easy for us to like debug in case we had like any issues. The major problem with this approach is that like if for whatever reason like any of those like rules are broken, the entire system would fail. And the debug process would be like very, very painful to figure out like what was going on back then. Another major flaw, believe it or not, is we had like several watch folders. And this is like on the right, you can see a picture with like quite a few watch folders. And that over time, it starts to like grow and grow more, because in 2005, we were producing a lot of like 4:3 video. And then like we start to change and add like 16:9. We had like new partnership and start to distribute our videos to like other partners. So the whole system started to become more complicated. So you, as a video journalist, instead of being worried about how do we like actually produce like great video content, you also need to be worried about, should I put this video in this folder or not? And like quite often we had like mistakes when like people put video in like in the wrong place. Another flaw was we had like a very unstable transcoding internal system. Those are like graphics that like pretty much like we use like FFprobe to pretty much like plot all the frames that we have through the video. And this vendor that I'm not going to mention the name, quite often came up with like that result. And you can see like in the bigger like graphic over here that like a few frames were like completely empty of data, which leads to the result that you can see here in our video library, a video that is like broken, and like depending on like the browser or like the platform, the video is just like stalled there. And this is not acceptable like at all. The New York Times is very famous for like the quality of like our journalism, and like deliver this kind of like content and experience to the user is not acceptable. Fourth floor, and yeah, it was like really hard to scale. And for 2005, the whole system was fine. In 2006, in a few years, but like we started to produce more and more video and incorporate video as an important part of like the content strategy for like the company. And you can see like this huge spike over the past like 2 years. We don't fully have like all the numbers yet for like this year, but this can give you like an overall idea like how you're growing. And maintain and keep updating that system was something that was like quite hard. Not a major problem, and again, like you as a journalist need to be worried about like how you're naming your file, where do you put it before you transcode, but you also need to be worried about like working two different CMS. Because some, like the videos that you produce, like the story log only would go so far, and then we would have like the next step, which is like how we publish that on like the website and link everything. So we end up saying, okay, enough. Like we had all of this for quite a while. It's time to change, and we need to like establish like what are like the major like goals and challenges for like the new system. And we come up with like 5 rules, like 5 things again. Which the first one is like we need to encode video like way faster than what we are doing. Like news clips are very time sensitive, and like every time that we spend like 1 extra minute in a queue or waiting for a video beat to be like transcoded, it can hurt like our business. And do you have some good examples?
Yeah. For example, we just had the elections, like the debates of the presidential elections, where we had the live feed coming to the building, and we had a lot of journalists creating video clips from those videos. So we had tons of videos being transcoded at the same time, and they are really, really time sensitive. We want those videos to be encoded as fast as possible.
Yeah. And with that said, like, fast encoding is not like enough. We also need to be able to like scale, because there are days that we have like breaking news alert. And the major challenge here is like, it's not like we are working with like sports contents where you can predict the future, you know when a match is going to happen, and you can like scale your entire solution for that. Like any breaking news can happen like at any given moment, and we need to be able to like dynamically scale that and like make that like something that is like, is going to work for like our needs. It also needs to be like reliable. So we need to scale that, and it needs to work, because if it doesn't, like, and we wait for like 1 hour to publish a video, it can have like a huge impact, because other sources of like news are going to be published, like everything is going to be on like Facebook and like any other like social media, and then like all of that buzz is already gone. Another interesting challenge that we have is like, this solution needs to be company-wide, because like when we created Starter Log back then, it was folks who like, okay, let's attend the needs of like our newsroom, but over time, more people started to produce videos, like the ads team and like our paid post team, and the CMS that we had didn't fully fulfill like the needs of like those other teams, so it ended up that they create their own thing, and like transcoding was like a major problem, because we didn't have like a unique way to deliver like the same quality for like our users. And the last one is high quality transcoding. We are producing like all of different sort of like video content, like 360 video. Now we just released the Daily 360 project, where we are going to be publishing like a 360 video every day. We have a bunch of like drone footage, live action, animation, and all of those different sort of contents, and we need to have something that is appropriate for like what is the content type. To talk about the solution, I'm going to hand over to Flavio, and he's going to explain a little bit more how we address those challenges.
So basically, on the beginning of this year, we decided to bootstrap a new development team on the video group. We hired more people. We decided to like create a new group to attack all of these problems that Max just said, like the flaws, all of the challenges that we have. And basically, we decided to create a set of small microservices, which just one like with just one mission on the pipeline as a whole.
Yeah.
So this is just like a really simplified version of all the components that we are like building on this Media Factory team. We are glad that a bunch of them are already in production. So for the 360 videos that Max just said, we released this project, which is the daily 360. We are gonna have 360 videos like every day, and the people are already using those components. So you can see on the corner of each of the boxes the technology being used. So we are kind of using Go, the Go programming language from Google, in a bunch of the backend services that we have. So it's kind of like a trend on the company. We have a lot of other APIs and backend services using Go.
It is one of like the top tier like language over there. We have like two more that are like basically like Java and like Node, but Go is like one of the primary ones.
Yeah, so basically I'm gonna walk through all of these boxes, like a bunch of them, and describe a little bit about like what they're doing and what are basically, I mean, the main actions that they do on the pipeline. So first of all, the Media Factory client is the only JavaScript component that we have on the pipeline. It's actually a client that runs on the browser, and it can interact with the Media Factory as a whole. So the main goal of this Media Factory client is to be used by other teams. Max is going to talk a little bit more about this, but we are leveraging the technology being developed by Evaporate.js, which is basically like an open source project that you can use to upload the files from the browser to the S3 bucket. So sometimes we have really huge files. We are talking about like raw videos or ProRes videos, like videos that are really huge, really heavy. For example, the food debate. So you want to have resumable uploads and recoverable uploads. We can have this with Evaporate.js. So we're using this as just a component of this Media Factory client. So we are basically linking the Evaporate.js with the client itself. And you can also trigger jobs on the Media Factory API. So you can upload the files and trigger the jobs, so you can generate MP4, WebM, HLS, and Dash renditions, and any other formats. We can talk a little bit more about this later. But this is basically like the main goal of this component on the pipeline, is to upload the videos, like big content, huge videos, heavy videos, to start the process on the pipeline as a whole.
And also to be used by other teams. Like if you remember, I mentioned that like other teams are starting to create their own like CMS for different like specific problems that they have. So we want to have something that is flexible enough to be used across the company, even if they are not tied to like the CMS.
So moving to the other component, we have the acquisition API. So sometimes you don't want to have a browser uploading the files to the pipeline. We have external partners that they have some feeds. So in case that you want to automatically like integrate with the Media Factory pipeline, you can use the acquisition API to send the videos and start the jobs. This is basically, as I said, for backend integration. And right now we don't have support for resumable uploads, but it's on our backlog. And as soon as we deliver this feature, we are going to open source this API as well.
A good example of that is like we have trailers and other sort of like contents that we do like acquisition through other partners. And in order to like leverage that, we don't really need to do any sort of like editing on top of like those videos. So we just want to transcode to follow the same preset standards that we have in place and publish them through like our pipeline.
So yeah, we have the Media Factory client is already integrated in production. People are using. We have the acquisition API. So moving to another component is the Media Factory API. It's kind of like the brain of our system because it is like it's basically the component where you can see all the business logics of the New York Times. So we have a lot of metadata from those videos. We have tags, we have description, we have title, we need to ingest all of this metadata on our machine learning system, recommendation system. So all of this stuff that's related to our internal APIs resides on the Media Factory API. One thing that is interesting as well is, I've already said that, but we are producing 360 videos. So we do have different configurations for the 360 videos and the standard videos that we have on our library. For the 360 videos, for example, we have higher bit rates, we have higher resolutions, and we have multiple formats so we can play back on all of the devices and platforms that we support. You can see all the presets that we are using on GitHub as well. I'm glad that we have this as open source project as well. It's just a bunch of JSON files where you can see the bit rates that we are using, the resolutions, the codecs, containers, the GOP size, how we are like splitting the segments, and all of these details you can see on this project. So moving to my favorite part is the Transcoding API. That's why it's green, it's this green color. We have a database in Redis. This is the Redis logo. It's written in Go as well. And the idea of the Transcoding API is not to implement a transcoding code like using libraries like the libav or ffmpeg. We wanted to integrate and to write just a wrapper to the encoding cloud services that are available right now, so we can achieve reliability and scalability automatically. So right now, we have the support for 3 different encoding services, and Gabe is helping me to integrate with one more. We're working really hard on this API. It's kind of like the most exciting part of the pipeline API, at least for me. So we can basically, like, if one of the services that we have the integration, if it goes down, we have 3 or 4 or 5 more services that we can trigger the jobs. And also, we can define just one common specification. We can define just one JSON file. And you can just select which provider you want to run the job. So let's say that we have a job for the news clips that we want to be transcoded as fast as possible. We can select the provider that gives this to us instead of like selecting the one that's cheaper, for example. So you can decide this because the API itself, it gives you an abstraction that you can basically select, just changing one field on the JSON file. I have an example of the JSON specification. So for this one, I'm using the Elastic Transcoder. We can just change the Elastic Transcoder to any other provider that is supported on the Transcoding API. But here you can also see that you have some details for this example in particular. We are using the adaptive bitrate output using HLS. So you can define, for example, the segment duration. And then you have the outputs. So this, you have like mixed outputs. You have MP4s and HLS. And you point to the presets. For the presets, I have another example. I can set the containers, the codecs, the resolution, the aspect ratio, the interlace mode, the audio codec, all of this stuff. And then with this, look at this, Gabe. I already have this encoder on the array. You can basically trigger jobs using the same preset and different providers. So this is kind of cool because it's up to you to decide which one you want to run, which one you trust, which one is cheaper, which one it's like makes more sense for you to use.
Yeah, this was like a really important like decision like for us because all of those different providers, they work like pretty well and they have their own like pros and cons, but all of the APIs were like different. And every time that we need to start like an integration, you need to say, okay, is this integration with partner with cloud provider A, B, or C, or D? And like the entire code should change. And when we come up with this idea was like, it needs to be a sort of like specification that is going to work across the board. And we do all of the mapping and translation to each specific project, each specific like cloud provider.
Max, we need to speed up because there's a beer meeting going on.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, this is way more important than
fast.
this.
So just a recap, we have this integration with multiple cloud services, reliability, scalability. You can define just one job and preset specification to use. And then the best part is that today we released as open source project as well, so you can use, if you were owner or if you are a developer of one cloud service, and you want to have your service integrated with our system, you can just go to this URL. This is actually a blog post that we wrote describing a little bit about the stuff that we did, about the stuff that we are talking about right now. You can just go there. There's like all the links of all the projects on GitHub. I'll be more than happy to see you like adding the star on the project, opening issues, creating pull requests. I'll be more than glad to look at the code that you're writing and trying to like integrate with different providers.
This is something that like the New York Times is very committed with like the whole open source like initiative. We leverage a lot of like open source projects and we want to give back like the community. There were like some very popular projects that we create, and the video team are solving a lot of like very common problems for like the entire like video industry. And we truly believe that like some of those projects that we are like creating today can help many other like companies. And it's something that is like we are really excited, and as the video group we like plan to invest more and more and add new sort of like integrations and also like open source other parts of like the pipeline.
Yeah, that's why I'm so excited, and that's why it's so like green, the part of the Transcoding API. So the last one, just for us to go and grab some beers, there's the distribution API. It just moves the file. So right now we are using S3 buckets for like this whole transcoding process. So on the uploading part, we receive the video from the browser or from another API, from another place, we put on the S3 bucket. We do all the operations, all the actions, we create new outputs, and we move to our CDN. So the API, the service responsible to move this file is the distribution API. We are using Aspera, which is a protocol that's really good for like transferring big files, and that's why we're using this one. We have plans to support the distribution to another partner. So for example, let's say that one journalist wants to publish a video on YouTube as well as on the nytimes.com. So it can just like check a mark box, and the distribution API will be responsible to deal with like the YouTube API internals and talk with the YouTube API to ingest the videos on this platform. Yeah. We also have the plans to support multiple CDNs. We are only using one, but we are planning to support more.
And again, because we are like building all of this with the mindset that like we want to open source when we get in a more like mature like state, all of this is going to be like flexible enough for like any company to use, not specific for the New York Times. So if your company doesn't have like an internal CMS and all of your like business model is like through like distribution to many different like social medias, you still could leverage that sort of like integration to figure out a way to like distribute that like massively across many places.
Yeah. So just a recap, we have two different ways to upload the files to the pipeline. We have the Media Factory client, which is a JavaScript client that you can use in the browser. You can also integrate with the acquisition API. Then there's the Media Factory API, which is just like the New York Times business rules. Then we have the Transcoding API, which is open source and you can use today. And then there's the distribution API that moves the file to the CDN. I'm gonna hand over to Max so he can talk a little bit more about the future, about what we're planning to do on the next steps for the Media Factory team.
Yeah, so we are very excited about like all of those things that we accomplished so far, but there are like way too many other things that we want to work, and like video quality is something that we take like very seriously because of like how our journalists treat like our content and like the quality that the content that we produce. So it's part of like the DNA of the company. So we need to figure out the ways to like I said, classify our content based on like, I don't know, like live action content that we produce, animations, 360, drone shots, and all sort of like content that we produce to have like a much better and optimized video experience for like our users, where we apply this right amount of like bit rate and like the right set of like rules for that. We're also very excited to invest like more time on VMAF. VMAF was something that like Netflix released early this year, I think in like June or July. It's a way to actually like measure perceptual video quality. It's something that is like very, very exciting and interesting for us because we want to figure out a way to like plug that in the entire pipeline and say, is this video does this video have like the output that we expect? And if not, we could even like fail the pipeline, or even like say, okay, it has a quality that is good enough for now, but we need to optimize that for like a second round of like transcoding. And another thing that I'm like a really strong advocate of like the open source, all of those like projects that you saw, like I think the only thing that we are not going to open source is the Media Factory API, because it has like very specific business rules that are very unique for the New York Times, and I don't think would be beneficial for like other companies. But the Transcoding API is already there. Like we mentioned, the distribution API and acquisition API is something that it will be out. And the third thing is Sneaker. Sneaker is a project that I'm particularly like very excited, because Flavio started this project in his own spare time, and this is actually like a transcoding API. This is a solution that gives us like the flexibility to actually have like a not only like cheaper but a more flexible like encoding like platform that can pretty much like adapt to like whatever is our need. All of those vendors that we are integrating that I mentioned in the past, they work like really well, but they have their own roadmap in terms of like features and products that they are delivering. And like last month, we had this like huge debate on the internet on like people leveraging the use of like VP9 codecs inside of like MP4 containers, and how can we like support that? And I feel like for us, that is a big opportunity to invest more in Sneaker to provide like an open source cloud provider solution that can transcode any sort of like videos as well, and invest more time. And this is something that we have very clear in our roadmap. So to wrap up, if you like anything that you saw here, so we always have like many open positions like at the New York Times in all the different like areas, not only technology, but product, business development, design, and so on. Please like check it out.
So we also have a blog. We host a blog just for engineering releases, about developers that want to talk a little bit about the day-to-day work. And I can tell you it's really great to work for the New York Times. I'm really happy that we have this open source culture being applied on the company as a whole. You can go to the open blogs. You can see a bunch of blog posts about different people, about different projects that we are working on right now. And we also have, actually, we are also on this Slack. video/dev.org is a Slack channel that you can find us, find the people that are working with us on the New York Times and a bunch of other companies. Yeah. They are basically like developers. And if you were one of those developers, join us. I'll be happy to see you introducing yourself.
It's a very exciting community of like engineers and people that are interested in video and that are working to like solve day-to-day like problems in like each company, and it's a really good place to exchange ideas and get to know more about like the other projects that we are doing. So
That's it.
Thank you. And if you guys have any questions, or if you just want to grab a beer, like feel free.
That's it. It's time.